What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Corey Hughes, Bloody History. So, we're going to spend some time on Jack Ruby because we never did. And so we're going to continue from where we left off yesterday. We got a solid, 15,000 pages of Jack Ruby documents. We're not going to obviously get through all of them. But we're going to try to get to the bottom of some stuff. So, from what I can tell, these individual documents are just all kind of shoved together here randomly in this FBI file. I can't really make any rhyme or reason out of it. But let's continue on, see if we can get somewhere. Rebarad, November 25th, 1963. Honolulu Advertiser, November 25th, 63. Carrie's story indicating Jack Ruby, while in Honolulu, June 61, tried to recruit entertainers for his Dallas burlesque house, the Carousel. He went to Barefoot Bar, a respectable nightclub at Queen's Surf, Honolulu, and approached Sterling E. Mossman, who was the leader of Barefoot Gang Entertainers, about coming to Dallas. Ruby, interested in girls, not musicians, told Mossman, the more they shake, the better, and could use 6 Tahitian dancers. Mossman later went to Fort Worth and stopped by to see Ruby at the Carousel. Mossman, who is former Honolulu police officer, but now a singer, musician, master of ceremonies, decided none of his entertainers would sign a contract with Ruby. Mossman quoted as saying Ruby stayed at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel and was accompanied by 2 out of 4 friends. Mossman currently at Knickerbocker Hotel, Los Angeles, and telephonic lead sent to that office to interview Mossman. FBI Honolulu check at Royal Hawaiian Hotel reflects no record of Ruby or Rubenstein as a guest at the Royal Hawaiian or other Sheraton hotels, 1960, 61, or 62, and identified 2 traveling companions unknown. Investigation by S.A. J. Sterling Adams today further revealed Q. Martin, local Negro musician, met Ruby on 61 visit and 2 male companions, both Caucasians, early 30s, one Mexican type, but names unknown and no pertinent background known. Let me see. Honolulu Star Bulletin, November 25th, 63, carries story that Frank, can't read that, it's written over, Pepe, P-E-P-I, member of Top Notchers Entertainment Group, now at Copacabana, Honolulu, knew Ruby slightly when they played Adolphus Hotel, Dallas, across from Ruby's Carousel. Pepe stated that he dropped in one night to catch a show, and after we were off, bought us a drink, invited us to drop in at the Carousel. His place stayed open later than the club we were playing, and I guess we went over a dozen times or so. Sometimes he'd send us over a drink. The Carousel wasn't a very nice place, but Ruby tried to give the impression it had real class. He was a typical nightclub owner. Ruby dressed well and was amicable. He would take a drink, but if he was a heavy drinker, I don't know. Pepe advised S.A. Adams he had only casual contact with Ruby in Dallas in 61, but no associated or other pertinent information known. No report being submitted. So they're documenting Ruby's travels, seeing who else he knew. 61, when he went there with a Mexican type? That's kind of interesting. Assassination of President John Kennedy, November 22, 1963. A woman identifying herself as Elaine Minier, M-Y-N-I-E-R, room 301, Spalding Hotel, San Francisco. Telephone GA12715 contacted San Francisco office and identified herself as the person who had recently been raped by 2 San Francisco Police Department officers, a case which has received considerable local publicity. Minier stated that she came from SF to Dallas about a year ago, had lived in Dallas for many years prior to that time, where she was employed at the National Car Rentals Dallas Airport. Presently works for the same concern in San Francisco. Stated she was well acquainted with Jack Ruby, did not believe he had the courage enough to kill anyone, and did not believe he had enough patriotism to be upset about President's assassination. Said that in May, following the January when Castro took over Cuba, she took a pleasure trip to Cuba. She said that Ruby saw her at the airport and gave her a short written message in code consisting of letters and numbers, including the word, quote, arriving, unquote. This was to be delivered to L.J. McWillie, who was then operating the gambling at the Tropicana Hotel in Havana prior to the time U.S. gamblers had to leave. States she delivered the message to McWillie, who made some comment regarding Ruby to the effect that, quote, he's nuts, unquote. States she's known McWillie for many years and has dated him in the past. Says that prior to going to Cuba, he was well-known Dallas and Fort Worth gambler and is certain he paid off local police. Says his wife, Juanita McWillie, still lives in Dallas area, and she knew him to be operating the gambling in the Riverside Hotel, Reno, Nevada, prior to the time the hotel went bankrupt about a year ago. She described McWillie as white, age 56, stocky build, 5'9", gray hair, blue eyes, distinguished looking and well-dressed. Above is for information of Bureau in Dallas and an event interview of McWillie as desired. Interesting details on the relationship between Jack Ruby and McWillie. And being that McWillie's wife was in Dallas, you can assume that Jack Ruby and McWillie were a lot closer than they let on. All right, to director in SAC Dallas, 11/25/63. Subject Jack Leon Ruby. Lee Harvey Oswald, Alec J. Heidel, O.H. Lee, victim, deceased, civil rights. Something's redacted here, something long, one whole line. And then it says, and then there's mass, so it must be a long address. Telephonically contacted S.A. Walter F. Brady, Springfield, Mass. Tonight, who requested name be kept confidential. Advised that Bob Sparks, Orbit Industries, 2700 Weisenberger, Fort Worth, Texas, who was a customer of called Redacted, morning of November 25 concerning business order. Incidental to business conversations, Sparks stated he was in the vicinity of Dallas PD when Oswald was shot and understood that Oswald had been seen going into Jack Ruby's place for the past month through a rear door. Does not know source of Sparks' information, but feels FBI should be advised of above. Stated he is unable to furnish any additional information. Dallas interview Sparks. Well, we know it's not Oswald, right? We know it's going to be William Seymour or Kerry Thornley. All right, next one, Jack Leon Ruby. Lee Harvey Oswald, victim. At 2:15 p.m. this date. What date is that? Looks like November 24th, 63. 2:15 p.m. this date, SAC Shanklin of the Dallas office telephonically advised that, pursuant to instructions, an agent was participating in the interview of Ruby at the Dallas Police Headquarters. Shanklin advised that he had been informed by the agent that Ruby claims no one else is involved, that no one knew that he, Ruby, was going to do it, and that he didn't tell anyone. Ruby stated he made no anonymous calls to anyone. Ruby further claimed that he didn't come down to the police department with the intention of shooting Oswald, but had come downtown to send the money by telegram to some employee. Shanklin advised they were checking out this angle. Ruby declined to state why he decided to kill Oswald. Ruby claimed he did not plan it beforehand. Shanklin advised that he also received information, which at this point was rumor to the effect that Ruby is alleged to have said that Mrs. Kennedy was going to have to come to Dallas to testify, and he thought this was a disgrace and it had been preying on his mind. Ruby stated he was worried about such a thing and that the grief that had befallen the Kennedys and indication that he dwelt upon it until he reached the point of insanity. Ruby also stated that the gun he used was bought 3 years ago from the Ray Hardware Company in Dallas. It was a .38 Smith & Wesson. Ruby indicated that he had nothing further to say and wanted an attorney. Shanklin advised Ruby was born Rubenstein in Chicago, and his parents were Fanny and Joseph Rubenstein, and both of them were dead. Ruby's been in Dallas since 1950 and operates the Carousel Club, a strip joint, and the Vegas Club in Dallas. He was advised that Ruby is single and has never been married. Memorandum to Mr. Belmont, reference Jack Leon Ruby. Shanklin was further advised that the indices of the police department and the Dallas office contained no information relative to any subversive activities with respect to Ruby. Shanklin further stated that there were some indications in the police files as well as in our Dallas office files that Ruby may have homosexual tendencies. Our files show an association with a pervert. That's interesting. Kind of supported by the statements of Rose Chermy. To Legat, London, Director FBI, Jack Leon Rubenstein, a.k.a. Jack Ruby. And then the preface says Relegatcab, Relegatcab, November 26 instant regarding John Wilson. Carl John Wilson, British journalist, has been involved with the revolutionary activities in Europe and South America since Spanish Civil War, 1939. Wilson has been critical of FBI on several occasions, was arrested July 1, 1959 by Castro for failure to carry out instructions regarding invasion against Nicaragua, and imprisoned for nearly 2 months. He testified before the Senate Internal Security Subcommittee September 2, 1959, in a rambling, disorganized fashion, displaying psychopathic symptoms. Prior information available at Bureau that Ruby in Havana, Cuba in 1959. Bureau desires no further investigation, re Wilson. Interesting. There's a note down here at the bottom. It says, interviews of Louis J. McWillie, Las Vegas, former manager, Tropicana Gambling Casino, Havana, Cuba, and Jay Bishov, B-I-S-H-O-V, and Sherwin Jack Braun, both of Chicago, reveal that Ruby was in Havana, Cuba, September 1959, for approximately 1 week vacation. All right, to Director FBI from SAC, Washington Field Office, Jack Leon Ruby, a.k.a. Jack Rubenstein. Background, referenced communication page 4, last paragraph, set forth a lead for San Francisco to locate and interview one Helen, I can't read this name, Afange, Afange Roan, in connection with investigation to obtain background data concerning a captioned subject. Roan reportedly was born in Kobe, Japan, and is possibly an alien. On 11/26/63, Stephen G. Weber, Supervisor, Information Unit, Central Office, United States Immigration and Naturalization Services, Washington, D.C., advised I.C. Thomas J. White that no record for Helen Afange Roan could be located in the Master Index for Unknown Immigrant Control Unit. Weber stated that these are central records maintained for all INS offices. All right, to Director FBI, SAC Dallas and Chicago, from SAC Washington. Subject Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald. Washington correspondent, Dallas Daily News, reportedly had information reflecting passing of money, either to subject or victim, in Chicago, Illinois, 2 weeks ago. Interviewed, stated he covers Justice Department. Heard rumor from reporters arriving in Washington, D.C. from Dallas, Texas, that a reported payoff had been made in Chicago, Illinois, 2 weeks before the assassination. He stated that it was a wild rumor reportedly emanating from a reporter of the Chicago Daily News working in Dallas. Redacted discussed this rumor with his city editor by telephone last evening, but unable to obtain any substantiation. Rumor allegedly originated from a police informant in Chicago, Illinois. This informant reportedly passed tip payoff to the police and federal police reporter of the Chicago Daily News. Redacted states he's been checking into gambling and racketeering ramifications of Ruby and telephoned Mr. Guthman of the Justice Department to determine if any indication that assassination could possibly be a result of the administration's crackdown on national hoodlums. Guthman had no such information. Added that Tony Zoppi, amusement editor of Dallas Daily News, would possess more background information on Ruby than anyone else known to Redacted. Tony Zoppi, very important name. Redacted stated that since this information is strictly rumor, he desired that information furnished reference his conversation with city editor Dallas Daily News not be divulged. All right, next one, Chicago Teletype, 1:55 a.m. November 25th. November 25, instant, approximately 9 a.m., SAC J. Gordon Shanklin, Dallas, received telephone call from SAC Marlon Johnson, Chicago, advising that Tony Weitzel, upon interview, denied being source of information contained in referenced communication and attributed sources being one redacted. Reporter, Dallas Morning News, Dallas, Texas. Investigation reflects reporter for Dallas Morning News stationed that firm, Washington, D.C., 920 Albee Building, telephone, blah, 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 presently covering funeral. On instant date at 10:15 a.m., SAC Shanklin telephonically contacted Mr. James Hanley, Bureau, and notified him of above. Hanley handling interview of redacted. SAC Johnson being contacted by telephone and advised of above due to interest of departmental attorney, Chicago. All right. FBI, November 26, 63, reference Jack Ruby. Mrs. Nona Gray, Nonagray, 211 Argo, San Antonio, Texas, is employed as a waitress at the Chuckwagon restaurant, at Josky's of Texas department store, San Antonio, furnished the following information. Mrs. Gray said that in about 1955, she married a man by the name of Paxton Harold Gray, and that sometime before they were married, she learned that Paxton Harold Gray was acquainted with a man known to her as Ben Ruby, who she understood was connected with a private bottle club in Dallas, Texas, which was known as the University Club. Mrs. Gray stated that she had seen on television pictures of Jack Ruby, also known as Jack Rubenstein, the alleged killer of Lee Harvey Oswald. Guys in the research chat, let's see what we can't find on Mr. Paxton Harold Gray, for what I believe should be obvious reasons. Mrs. Gray stated that Paxton Harold Gray got a divorce from her in the state of Indiana in 1958 or 59, and she believes he is at this time living in Dallas, Texas, where he is an independent oil operator, and she also believes that he has remarried his former wife, Eunice. Mrs. Gray said she had no further information as to the extent of association by Paxton Harold Gray and the individual known to her as Ben Ruby, nor was she certain that the individual known to her as Ben Ruby is identical with Jack Ruby, the alleged killer of Lee Harvey Oswald, but that she thought that they resembled each other. This document contains neither recommendations nor conclusions. It's proper to the FBI, etc., etc. Next one, to SAC, Las Vegas, Chicago. From Director FBI, reference Jack Leon Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald. Dave Dingy Halper, nightclub operator, should be located and interviewed. Reference he possesses information concerning Rubenstein. Should interview. It says Dango Medlevine, owner of Chez Paree nightclub, but he's probably talking about Maurice Medlevine and his brother. Regarding his association with Ruby, for Info LV, columnist Tony Weitzel advised Ruby may be an associate of Halper. The president being in Fort Worth prior to his arrival. Looks like is this cut from the former? Yeah, this is a totally separate document, but it starts on page 2, so we're missing a page here. Actually, it's just out of order. Let me start it here. Jack Leon Ruby, a.k.a., etc., etc. Subcaption, Jack Leon Ruby, possession of firearms. Floyd Beal, parenthesis, who has a chiropractic office at 221 Robin Hood Lane in Bloomington, Illinois, and resides at 311 East Virginia Street, Normal, Illinois, advised that he attended the Parker Chiropractor Seminar at the Hotel Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, Thursday, 11/21 last to 12 noon, 11/24 last. Beal advised he arrived at Fort Worth, Texas on the morning of 11/21 last and attempted to obtain accommodations at the Hotel Texas, however, was unable to obtain accommodations in view of President Kennedy's party being at the Hotel Texas. Beal advised he was not aware of the president being in Fort Worth prior to his arrival. Beale advised that he checked into the Blackstone Hotel, Fort Worth. He stated on the afternoon of 11/21, he took a walk and visited the Leonard's department store at Fort Worth, Texas. Beale stated he attended the Parker Seminar at the Hotel Texas starting at 6 p.m. on 11/21 and attended the days of 11/21, 2, and 23 until noon on 11/24. Beale advised that during the lunch hour on 11/23 last, he and a fellow classmate, John Bielderbach, of Houston, Texas, went to the Leonard's department store to purchase gifts for their children. Beale advised that this visit to Leonard's department store was between 1:15 and 1:30 on 11/23 last. Beale advised that he and Bielderbach walked by the gun counter in the basement of Leonard's department store. He noted a man appearing to be purchasing a revolver. He stated the sales clerk was writing out a sales ticket and the revolver was lying on top of the counter. Beale states he recalls he asked Bielderbach if a permit was necessary to purchase a gun in Texas, and he stated to Bielderbach it was not. Beale stated that he saw the man making the purchase of the gun from the rear only and recalls the man was wearing a gray hat with a wide black hat bank and a suit, color unknown. He further recalls that the man had black hair, which was cut square across the back of his neck. Beale states he left Fort Worth, Texas approximately 4 p.m., 11/24 last, and did not see any newspaper accounts or television newscasts of the death of Oswald. Beale states as he was leaving St. Louis, Missouri, approximately noon, 11/25 last, via train to Bloomington, Illinois, a lady sitting across from the aisle of him had a St. Louis Globe Democrat newspaper. Beale stated as he was looking over her shoulder, he saw the photograph of Ruby. He advised that he is positive Ruby is the man he saw purchase the revolver from Leonard's department store, Fort Worth, Texas, 11/23 last. So that is a fascinating account. In Houston on the 23rd, this man believes he saw Jack Ruby purchasing the gun. I mean, he absolutely did. Jack Ruby was most certainly in Galveston to bring Andrew Jerome Blackman back to his boat. He most certainly stayed at least a night at the Alamo Motel. And the timing here on the 23rd would make sense because it would be that night that he would return to Dallas, and the next day is when he shoots Oswald. And it's Bon Voyage, Jack Ruby. All right, so I'm going to have to make note of this. This is around page 57 of 4,723. All right, moving on to the next one. Jack Leon Ruby. It's all the same stuff. To director in SAC Dallas and all this stuff. That hasn't really seemed to change much. A lot of communication going on between the various between the various field offices, including the Washington, the Dallas, Chicago. All right, to reference Washington Field Teletype, 11:08 p.m., November 25th, 1963, setting forth results of interview with reporter redacted. The Dallas office is requested to interview the reporter of the, quote, Chicago Daily News, unquote, working in Dallas, who is allegedly the source of redacted information. Ascertained from this reporter the basis for his information. It is suspected by the Chicago office that, quote, Chicago Daily News, unquote, reporter Jack Wilner, I can't read that, here's a line over it, may possibly be the source of this information. It is suggested that that Dallas also interviewed Tony Zoppi, amusement editor of the Dallas Daily News, who is reported to possess more information on Ruby than anybody else. All right, here's another one. Same date, 11/26, reference Jack Ruby, possible cohort of Jack Ruby. Dr. William Humphrey, American International Oil Company, New York City, telephonically advised that he had watched both CBS and NBC tapes and replays of the assassination of Lee Harvey Oswald. He stated that in the course of watching the slow motion showing of the CBS tape, he noted at the beginning of the tape something appeared to him to have possible significance. He pointed out that in the background is a tiled wall which has a 90-degree corner where the corridor emerges from the vicinity of the elevator. He noted a tall blonde man, presumably a detective, who was actually the second man from the corner. He stated that just prior to the time that Oswald and the detectives accompanying him emerge from the elevator corridor and appear in front of this tiled wall, this tall blonde man raises his hand in what appeared to be a signal and brought it down along his body. He stated that he recognized that this might have been a signal by a newspaperman to a cameraman that Oswald was appearing, but he desired to bring it to our attention in view of the possibility that it may have been a deliberate signal to Ruby. Dallas may desire to procure the CBS film and identify the individual described by Mr. Humphrey. All right, next one. Mrs. Betty Jean Sims, Fullerton, California, interviewed at Woodruff Gables Hospital, Bellflower, California today. She advised she met Jack Ruby, who she knew as Jack Rubenstein, about 1946 when she was 14 years old. She stated that Rubenstein and his sister, Rose, last name unknown, ran the Silver Spur Bar, South Irving Street in Dallas, and posted help wanted notice in the window. Sims stated she was 14 years of age and was accepted for a waitress job pretending to be 18 years of age. Advised she worked one night as a waitress at the Silver Spur and left this bar. And then you have a sentence and a half, looks like a line and a half redacted. Stated only other time she saw him was at the Vegas Club, Dallas, about 1956 for a few moments. Advised she knows of no association between subject and Oswald, and only knows he came from Chicago, Illinois. Silver Spur was his first bar in Dallas. Knows of no hoodlum or gambling connections or connections with Dallas Police Department. She observed Dallas Police Department officer in Silver Spur after hours, 12 to 2 a.m. night that she worked. No subversive connection by Rubensteins known to her. Only relative known, Sister Rose, last name unknown, who ran bar with subject. Knows no girlfriends, does not know background of Ruby or his parents. Advised she considers subject a thug and vulgar. All right, this is an interesting one. Jack Leon Ruby, blah, blah, blah. Date 11/25/63. All logical sources and informants in the Salt Lake City Division have been contacted and alerted for information regarding Ruby. No pertinent information has been developed to date. Information as to sources contacted is being maintained in the Salt Lake City files. Read Dallas Tell to New Orleans, November 25 last, and New Orleans Tells November 26 instant. Paul Cascio, C-A-S-C-I-O, manager of the Blue Angel Club, 231 Bourbon Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, advised SAS James E. Schmidt Jr. and Frank A. Sass Jr. that approximately 6 months ago, an individual identifying himself as Jack Ruby, owner of the Carousel Lounge, Dallas, Texas, came to the Hootsie Tootsie Bar, located at 232 Bourbon Street, where he was working as a bartender. Ruby introduced himself and claimed to be inquiring in New Orleans as to the amount of money paid to strippers on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. After getting a general idea of the amount of money being paid to these girls, and after being referred to as Jada, a dancing girl at the 500 Club on Bourbon Street, he apparently made some contact and tried to contact this stripper. Cascio had no knowledge of, nay, further contact that Ruby may have had with anyone in any of the other clubs on Bourbon Street. He stated that he saw Ruby on only one occasion in the evening, and that time he was alone. No conversation ensued other than concerning strippers. In addition to above information, contacts were made with additional Bourbon Street nightclub managers and barkers where strippers are employed. However, they were not known to have any contact with Ruby. 302, insert mail Dallas. All right, to SACS New Orleans and Dallas from Director FBI, Jack Leon Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald. Renotel instant 4:38 a.m. CST concerning information that person identifying himself as Ruby in New Orleans possibly 6 months ago, inquiring concerning about money being paid to strippers. New Orleans, if not already done, should immediately contact business agent for American Guild of Variety Artists for any information available to pinpoint time Ruby in New Orleans and other background information concerning him, handle, and advise. That's another thing. Guys in the chat, please pull everything on the American Guild of Variety Artists. This has been a subject I've dabbled with but need to kind of iron out. All right, next one. Dated 11/25, same headings. Rebutel to all SACs this date and Minneapolis tell to Chicago this date. For information of Bureau, the Minneapolis office advised by telephone this date that their files reflect SGE cases on one Marion Ruth Levine, nee Rubenstein, a.k.a. Mrs. Irving Levine, in 1953 and subsequent SGE case in 1956. Former concerning employment at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, latter at McClellan Air Force Base. Employee born New York City, February 4, 1921. Married Irving Levine to 1846 in New York City. Appeared on membership list. Communist Party, New Jersey. Insufficient background in Rebutel to all SACS on Marion Carroll of Chicago to resolve if Carroll identical to employee in SGE cases. Chicago had no leads in SGE cases. So here we go again with the Rubensteins, Marion Ruth Rubenstein, who went on to become Mrs. Irving Levine, seems to be on the membership list of the Communist Party in New Jersey. So you have this weird connection between the Rubensteins and the Communist Party, but I don't think it's I don't think that they were members. I think it's something else. I think this somehow connects to Ruby and his activities in the Kefauver hearings with Nixon and whatnot. During interview with Mrs. Miriam Carroll, 1044 West Loyola Street, Chicago, sister of Jack Ruby, she advised BU agents, FBI agents, that she was born June 30, 1906 at Chicago and has been employed by United States Treasury Savings Bond Division, Chicago, for 22 years. Her husband, Nathan Carroll, from whom she is separated, is a part-time bartender whose present whereabouts is unknown to her. It appears that Carroll is not identical with employee in Minneapolis SGE cases. However, Bureau may desire to review files to verify. So the sister, one of his sisters, because he has numerous sisters, works for the United States Treasury in the Savings Bond Division. That's something. The hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. Reference that. Chicago will review records to verify birth of Marion Carroll at Chicago and was furnished by her during interview. All right, next one. Background. Tony Lenardi, manager of the Playhouse Cafe, 550 North Clark Street, Chicago, advised SAS William A. Meinke, Meincke, and Joseph G. Shea on 11/26/63 that he's been, looks like, assisted with the operation of strip joints in Chicago for over 25 years. He advised that he knew practically every owner and male employee in such business over the years. He advised that Jack Ruby was never associated in the nightclub business in any way. In Chicago for the past 25 years, Leonardi advised that he feels that it is likely that Ruby may be confused with one Harry Rubenstein, who was a successful strip joint owner from 1946 to sometime in the 1950s. Harry Rubenstein had a reputation for violence and was involved in at least one murder for which he was later acquitted Leonardi is positive that Ruby and Harry Rubenstein were never associated in any way. Saul Warshawski, owner of the Playhouse Cafe, 550 North Clark Street, Chicago, advised SAS Shea and Meinke, M-E-I-N-C-K-E, on 11/26/63 that he's been in the strip joint business in Chicago for over 30 years. He advised that he knew Jack Ruby for about 25 years ago in Chicago and characterized him as a, quote, small-time chiseler and hanger-on, unquote. Warshawski said that Ruby liked to act the, quote, big shot, unquote, but rarely could back himself up. Warshawski said Ruby never had any connection with organized crime or criminals in Chicago and had never been involved in any strip joint operation in Chicago either as an owner or employee. Warshawski advised, however, that Ruby frequented a gambling place formerly operated by Joe Tuchman, Tuchman, now deceased, in the vicinity of Damon and Division Street in Chicago. Ruby, according to Warshawski, was a small-time bettor and frequented the place more for the free food which was offered in those days than for gambling activity. Warshawski said that Ruby would put down a, quote, few bets, unquote, each week of small size. In those days, Ruby was considered to be a, quote, loner, unquote, and that he had no close friends. Warshawski knew him as a loud and boisterous individual with a quick temper. Warshawski advised that, to his knowledge, Ruby had no connection with anyone in Chicago for many years. Redacted was contacted by S.A. William F. Romer on 11/25/63, but at that time had no personal knowledge of Ruby. On 11/26/63, Redacted advised that he had solicited information from politicians of the 24th Ward, the former voting residents of Ruby. PC advised that he talked to two persons who appeared to know Ruby from many years ago. They advised that Ruby was never anything but a punk, unquote, and never had any hoodlum connections or associations. One person advised that he recalls that Ruby attempted to sneak into a prize fight in Chicago, believed to be the second Dempsey-Tunney fight, and was caught by a police officer who beat him over the head with a nightstick. As a result of his beating, Ruby now has a plate in his head. Apparently, this causes pressure when Ruby becomes excited and causes Ruby to act emotionally. I wonder if that's actually true or not. All right, next one. To director in SACS Chicago and Dallas from Detroit. Reference Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald. SAMC Clements, Dallas, telephonically contacted to Supervisor Neil Rice, Detroit, today requesting Earl Ruby be re-interviewed for the following specific items. Any illness of Jack Ruby? If so, when, where, and what doctor? Any knowledge of hospitals in which Jack registered? Any knowledge of psychiatric examinations? If so, when, where, what doctor, and results? Any knowledge of Jack being examined from a mental standpoint? If so, full details. Any knowledge Jack has a plate in his head? If so, full details. Reports have it Jack's mother has been in and out of mental institutions. If so, full details. Any other member of family in mental institutions? If so, full details. S.A. Clements instructed that result of this interview be submitted today without fail in a TT to Bureau in Dallas. No TT language to be used. I wonder what that means. As set forth in DETT to Bureau, Chicago and Dallas, November 26th last, Earl Ruby indicated that he was leaving at noon, November 27th instant, with his wife Marge to spend the Thanksgiving holidays with his wife's family, who reside at 7207 North Prairie, Lincolnwood, Illinois. Telephone number or 3-2733. They do not plan to return until December 1 next. Investigation at DE today at Earl Ruby's residence and or business revealed Ruby departed Detroit as scheduled at about noon today. All the above information was immediately telephonically furnished to Supervisor Joseph Ziel, Z-I-E-L, CG office today. Relative to the investigation set forth as to whether one Earl Ruby, who formerly resided in New Haven 1940, at which time he allegedly signed a Communist Party petition. See, here we go, more of the Ruby family allegedly involved in Communist Party activities. But these guys were connected. These guys are all mob connected. So the idea that they're doing things overtly with the Communist Party, give me a break. Make sure that he's identical to the Earl Ruby, subject of brother. New Haven requested that the residence of subject's brother be determined during the summer and fall of 1940. Supervisor Zeal was furnished this information, was requested to ask Ruby when interviewed in Chicago, his residence in 1940. All right, next one. To the SACS in Dallas and Los Angeles. The Hilton Hotel NYC uses IBM charge card system, and the number mentioned in reference teletype was obtained from an autostat of IBM card furnished by Hilton Hotel, reflecting telephone number 213-523-0930, has made 8463 from Ruby's room. Recheck of original IBM card at Hilton Hotel reflects this as correct number. All right. To director in SAC Dallas from SAC Mobile, Alabama. Jack Leon Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald subjects. All right. Walter C. Oh, man, I can't tell what that name is. Looks like Clewis, Clewis. Something tells me that's not correct. Manager, Municipal Auditorium, Mobile, Alabama, advised S.A. James Day. He had met Jack Ruby in Dallas and knew him over a period of several years. Clewis, yep, I guess it is, stated that Ruby had a partner, name not recalled, who was in partnership with Ruby in the carousel and booked rock and roll shows throughout Texas. Clewis stated that in his business as manager of Municipal Coliseum Auditorium, San Angelo, Texas, he knew the partner of Ruby first and was subsequently introduced to Ruby at the carousel. Clewis stated it was his opinion on basis of information he had obtained from unrecalled sources that Ruby booked striptease shows for something throughout the state of Texas. Clewis stated that he had tried, he had been unable to recall the name of the individual who contacted him and identified Ruby's partner, but he is sure that the name appears in the files of the Municipal Coliseum Auditorium at San Angelo, Texas, as they had much correspondence with this individual since the individual wrote them a check which bounced. Clewis stated he did not personally like Ruby, as Ruby always attempted to be the big shot and boasted not only to him but other people in his presence that he could do anything he wanted in Dallas, and he had enough information on the police department and judges that he could not be convicted. Clewis stated that something in San Angelo, he had a secretary named Jean Pierce Olson who resided with her parents, C.H. Olson, 121 Howard Street. He stated that this secretary did not have a particularly good reputation, as she was alleged to have dated Negroes in addition to numerous other individuals. Clewis stated that in October of 1961, he fired his secretary and then permitted her to resign. She then, through the above-mentioned unrecalled partner of Ruby, obtained a position working for Ruby at one of his clubs in Dallas. He stated that he subsequently met Jean Pierce, and she advised that she did not stay long in her position there, as something was funny about the place, and that she was dissatisfied with the costume she wore. Clewis stated he did not pursue the subject with Pierce at the time and had no further information as to why she left Ruby's employ. Dallas at San Angelo will at Municipal Coliseum Auditorium review records to identify partner of Ruby. Should be Ralph Paul John. Will, unless Dallas has information indicating to the contrary, attempt to locate and interview Jean Pierce Nee Olson through parents C.H. Olson at 121 Howard Street. All right. Next one, background of Ruby. Mr. Y.C. Terrell, 131 Grammont Avenue, Dayton, Ohio, telephonically advised that while watching TV about 2 months ago pertaining to the testimony of Joseph Valachi, Valachi mentioned several underworld gangsters in his testimony, including the name of Rubenstein. Terrell recalled Valachi mentioned Rubenstein was residing in Texas at the time. Terrell could furnish no additional information. If Bureau has testimony of Valachi available, consideration should be given to review of testimony to determine if reference is made to Rubenstein in Texas. I think that's very doubtful. All right, to Director SAC's New York and Newark from SAC Dallas. Investigation Dallas established one Ralph Paul. a.k.a. Raphael Paul, is admittedly closest personal friend of Jack Ruby. Here's the deal. His real name is Ralph Paul John. I don't know why nobody could fucking understand this. They used to call the guy Johnny. Johnny was his nickname. Okay? Go find his obituary. Put in Ralph Paul John. It'll come right up. So I don't know why every goddamn document in the world that mentions Ralph Paul never mentions that ever. No book that ever mentions him ever mentions that ever. It's ridiculous. Paul, white male, born in Kiev, Russia. December 17th, 1899. Presently operates a drive-in restaurant in Arlington, Texas. Came to Dallas December 27th, 47 from New York City, where he was the owner of Ralph's Fruit Exchange, 161st Street, between Walton and Girard, Bronx, New York. Operated this business 20 years, and prior thereto, until 1927, was engaged with father in Paul's Fruit Exchange, 159th Street, New York City. While in New York, resided 1152 College, Bronx, New York, 1922 to December 1947. Paul claims entered U.S. with father in 1901 or 2, with mother following in 1907 or 8. States obtained derivative citizenship through naturalization of parents. New York City, date unknown. Parents identified as Samuel Paul, deceased, 1945, and Tilly Paul, currently residing 2265 Sedgwick, New York, New York. Brothers as follows: David Paul, address unknown, but living in the Bronx, whereas operates parking lot on Bronx or Brook or Brooking Avenue. Lewis Paul, address unknown, reportedly employed as a salesman of women's belts and who formerly operated Pleasant Finance Company, Inc., 25 Main Street, Lodi, New Jersey. New Jersey license, blah, blah, blah. Sister Lee Paul Berry, 2565 Sedgwick, New York, New York. Husband deceased. Cousin Mac Paul, address unknown, employed grocery clerk, Bronx, New York. Paul stated formerly married to one Beatrice Shull, Shull, 1931, now remarried, name and address unknown, but residing Manhattan. Paul admits holds 50% of stock in S&R Inc., Texas Corporation, owner of Carousel Club, operated by Jack Ruby. Dallas indices negative on Paul and relatives. New York Review INS records that would establish Paul's citizenship. Check indices on Paul and relatives named herein, including former wife Beatrice Shull Paul. Interviewed Tilly Paul and other members of the immediate family mentioned above for full background and knowledge of association between Ruby and Ralph Paul, and any known activities or affiliation with subversive organizations. All right. I think this is a good place to wrap up for today. We will pick up here tomorrow. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate it.